All right, welcome back. This is Melanated Truth. Welcome back to Melanated Truth. My name is John Farmer. This is another Torah talk. We are going through Genesis, whole book of Genesis. We're now in Genesis chapter 4. By way of quick review, so that we can understand where we are in the story, because this is one continued story. You can't understand Genesis chapter 4 if you don't understand Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3. At the end of Genesis chapter 1, there's a poem, and the Most High is saying the poem. And the poem is about his image bearers. It's this poetic articulation of the beauty of the fact that man is created in the image of God, in the image of him, God. He created them, male and female. He created them, both male and female. These dirt creatures are image bearers and have been given this kind of royal proxy to rule and to reign on the earth. That's what Genesis 1 is all about. There's a lot of other things that happen there. Go back and look at it if you're interested. In Genesis chapter 2, it ends with another poem. And the poem now is Adam doting over Isha, his wife. And he says, this is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bones. I will call her Isha because she was taken from Ish. She was taken from man. So it's Genesis chapter 1, God dotes over these humans that are now his image bearers. Genesis chapter 2, Adam gets a partner in his wife Eve, and he dotes over her, and they're both naked and unashamed. It's this beautiful picture of what shalom is. Shalom is partnership and relationship with the Most High, and partnership and relationship with humanity. And when the vertical and the horizontal relationships are both working perfectly, that's what we call, or both working well, that's what we call shalom. It is the edenic ideal that we see in Genesis 1 and chapter 2. In chapter 3, it ends with a poem, but the poem is from the Most High, and it's actually the set of curses. And we saw that in chapter 3, there's a serpent who is also bronze, who is also a conjurer. And this conjurer tried to whip up basically this plan to get the man to curse himself. Presumably, the serpent Nahash was hoping that he would be able to be the ruler and the reigner in this terrain instead of these dirt creatures, because he's the shining one. He's the conjurer. He's more crafty than all the other beasts of the field. And these little dirt creatures is who God gives the earth to. He doesn't like it. And at the end of this whole saga, Adam and Eve, they both eat the fruit. And as many of you already know, and for more details, go back and listen to Genesis, us talking about Genesis chapter 3. But it also ends in a poem, and the poem is this set of curses. God curses the serpent, and God curses the ground. It's not what Nahash was hoping for. Nahash was hoping that either God would kill Adam and Eve immediately, or he would at least curse them so that they're no longer the blessed ones. They would no longer carry the blessing of ruling the earth. Right? He wants to usurp the authority, but instead he gets cursed to crawl on the ground. He gets demoted even amongst the beasts. And the ground gets cursed. So now Eve and Adam are having to deal with the curses, but it's not their curse. They're having to deal with the curse of the serpent and the curse of the ground. At the end of this saga, let's look back at it really, really quickly. At the end of the saga, verse 20, the man named his wife Eve, and we said that was Hua, the last three letters in the Most High's name, which just means life. He named his wife Eve because she was called the mother of all life. And Yahuwah Elohim made for Adam and his wife, Isha, garments of skin, and she clothed them. The point is, Adam names his wife life. In other words, this is what happens. They knew that the moment that when the day that they eat this fruit, they're supposed to die. God pronounces curses on the serpent for tricking them, curses on the ground, and now he's telling them that they're going to have to deal with the consequences of the mess that they've made. Namely, they have an adversary that hates them and that now is eating the dust. And they're going to have to return to the dust at some point eventually. But ultimately, the Most High promises them that through the line, through what he says is the seed of the woman is going to crush the head of the serpent. That's the good news, or the gospel promise to them. And now Adam responds to this gospel promise by naming his wife life. In other words, this is a salvific response. This is a response of faith, saying, we know that we messed up, and I'm believing the promise of the Most High that our line is going to continue because of his grace. Okay. So again, it's pointing to this theme of what's in a name. Half of the creative work that the Most High does is he names creation. He creates it and then he names it. That we talked about that in Genesis 1. In Genesis 2, he brings Adam into the naming of creation. He partners with him. And now we see after all of this chaos, Adam names his wife as a response by faith to what the Most High has promised. So now let's keep going forward. So in Genesis chapter 4, what we should expect is the furthering of the story of Genesis chapter 3. There's been a colossal promise given to the man and to his wife, and that promise is that through your line, you're going to crush the serpent that tricked you, and all the curses that have been done will be undone, will be unraveled. So this is what their expectation is. So now, with that in mind, let's read a little bit of Genesis chapter 4, and we'll stop. Now, Adam knew, that is yada. We talked about that word knew. It's more than just cognitive knowledge. It's experiential knowledge, and we see this here. Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain. And she said, I have given birth to a man with the help of Yahuwah. Then she bore his brother Abel. And Abel became a keeper of sheep, and Cain became a tiller of the ground. And in the course of time, Cain brought an offering from the fruit of the ground to Yahuwah. And Abel also brought an offering from the choicest firstlings of the flock. And Yahuwah looked with favor to Abel and to his offering, but to Cain and to his offering, he did not look with favor. And Cain became very angry, and his face fell. And Yahuwah said to Cain, why are you angry? And why is your face fallen? If you do well, will I not accept you? But if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desires for you, but you must rule over it. So let's just stop there for just a second. What's in a name? We said that as a response to the gospel or the good news, Adam names his wife Eve. Now, Adam, the next thing that we see is that Adam and Eve have a son, and they name him Cain. Now, this begins to get into the psyche of what's going on with Adam and Eve and where their expectations are. And I just want to pull up this little tool for you guys. In Hebrew, this is the word Cain right here. Kaf, Yod, Nun. Cain. It means, according to this, it means smith or spear, political leader. It comes from these root words, this noun that means spear. Just read this part real quick. And the verb, Q-Y-N or Cain, which isn't used in the Bible, occurs in cognate languages and other languages that are Semitic and close to the area, with the meaning to fit together or fabricate or forge, often with metal, in other words, like a spear. In the Bible occurs only once, Cain, meaning spear, which is the exact same three, letters, which means spear, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're talking about is an Adam and Eve, man and his wife, whose now name is Life. They have a son, and they name him Spear. Why would they name their son Spear? Well, it's in accordance with the promise, right? This is the curse that he puts upon the serpent, and I will put hostility between you and between the woman, and between your offspring and between his offspring. He will strike on your head, or he will strike you in the head, and you will strike him on the heel. So that as soon as Adam and Eve have a baby, they name him Cain. Cain means spear. In other words, they by faith are naming their son. They're saying, this is going to be the son that destroys the woman. In other words, this is going to be Messiah. The Most High promised that the seed of the woman is going to crush the serpent's head. So this must be that seed. Moving on, it says, and she said, I have given birth to a man with the help of Yahuwah. Let's look down at that in just Hebrew real quick, because there's a little bit of a wordplay that's going on here. And she said, I have gotten. It's the verb kanati, which comes from kana. So she names her son Cain because she has kanad. She's kanad a son. In other words, this son is my possession. I have, in other words, he's come. She's, in her mind, she's heralding the good news, right? My son is here. The Cain is here. I've gotten this spear. Now we have the spear that can kill the serpent and can undo all the bad stuff that has happened. Then, verse 2, then she bore his brother Abel. I wonder what Abel means. Let's look at it. This is two forms of the same word, Abel. And it just means vanity or breath. The verbal form of Habal or Abel means to act emptily or become vain. So now, a mother and father have two kids. Maybe they're twins. It doesn't exactly say that, but possibly, especially later on in the book of Genesis, there's a whole bunch of twins, and there's enmity between a bunch of twins over and over again, right? It doesn't exactly say that Cain and Abel are twins, though. But mom and dad have these two sons. One they name Spear, and they say that he's this great possession that they've gotten. And the other they name Vanity or Breath. Nobody. Doesn't matter. Who cares? In other words, Adam and Eve are completely, well. Let's just look on and see how the story turns out. So the question that we're posing in Genesis chapter 4 is Cain Messiah? Is he the savior? Maybe Cain is the savior. Adam and Eve sure seem to think so by the way they name him. Abel became a keeper of sheep. That's interesting. What is Adam and Eve clothed in after the curses? Where is it? And Yahuwah sent them out from the garden. I'm sorry. And Yahuwah made for Adam and his wife garments of skin, and he clothed them. Okay. So remember, Adam and Eve, when they find out they're naked, they cover themselves in fig leaves, and because they find out that they're naked. Apparently, whatever that covering is wholly inadequate to cover them. So when God pronounces the message that he's going to undo this whole situation, he's going to fix it, and he's going to actually use them to be a part of fixing it. He then clothes them in skin and then sends them out. Now we fast forward. Eve has Cain and Abel. Abel they name emptiness or vanity or nothingness, and Abel becomes a keeper of sheep. Interesting. The same thing that the Most High clothes them in. And Cain became a tiller of the ground which is cursed, in which they try, the fig leaves that Adam and Eve tried to cover themselves in. That's interesting. One was accepted, the one that the Most High himself made for him, and one was rejected. I wonder what will happen in this story. Verse 3, and in the course of time, Cain brought an offering from the fruit of the ground to Yahuwah, and Abel brought an offering from the choicest firstlings of the flock. And Yahuwah looked with favor to Abel, the one whose name means vanity or nothing, breath, the lesser of the two, and to his offering, but to Cain, possession, spear, and to his offering he did not look on with favor. And Cain became very angry, and his face fell. Who's the last one that was angry in the story that we've been reading? Because it's all one story. It may seem like we've moved on, but the same story is being told. Who was the last one that was angry? We looked at that last week. Now the serpent was more crafty than the other beast of the field, which Yahuwah Elohim had made. And he said to his woman, did God indeed say you shall not eat from the tree of the garden? Remember, that word there is really strange. It's the word ap, which means nose, which is a Hebrew euphemism for angry. When it says that God is slow to anger, it says that he is long of nose, right? So it's the serpent who's angry and in deceit wants to have Adam and Eve kill themselves by disobeying the Most High. So now we got this guy named Spear, who Adam and Eve seem to think is Messiah. He's going to be the one that crushes the serpent's head. And Abel, instead, Yahuwah accepts Abel's gift and rejects Cain's gift. And that rejection makes Cain very angry. He starts to mimic the serpent, and his face fell. And Yahuwah said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why is your face fallen? If you do well, will not I accept you? But if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." What was cursed to crouch? What was cursed to crawl in Genesis chapter 3? Because you have done this, you will be cursed more than any of the domesticated animals and more than any of the wild animals. And on your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. Chapter 4, verse 6. And Yahuwah said, "Why are you angry, and why is your face fallen? If you do well, will I not accept you? But if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you." It's the serpent. And it's the serpent personified. This is an artistic rendition. It's not literally the serpent. The scriptures don't say that. It's he says that sin is the one that's crouching at the door. But the point is, this is a replay of what's just happened. Now, this man named Spear is supposed to be Messiah, but instead he's starting to act like the serpent. Which one is it? Is he the serpent or is he the savior? And the whole point is rulership. Who is supposed to rule this terrain? The serpent does all this stuff to usurp authority and to rule over not only humanity, but the whole terrain, right? So now he's saying sin is crouching at the door. Sin is acting like the serpent near you. Now you're at the same place that your mom and dad, Adam and Eve were at. And the question is, are you going to pass the test or are you going to fail it? Sin is now crouching at the door, and its desire, the same thing that Eve, the consequences of Eve, right? Her desire is going to be for her husband. In other words, she's going to want to control her husband. Now it's saying that sin is crouching at the door of Cain, and its desire is for him, but he must rule over it. He's got to take his rightful place as image bearer and rule over all the things that, the quote unquote beast. Now this is metaphorical, so go with me. Wonder what happens. Verse 8. Then Cain said to his brother Abel, Spear said to his brother Vanity, "Let us go out into the field." Interesting. And they went out to, excuse me. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Cain, the spear. Adam and Eve said, "I'm going to name him Cain because he's our great possession." Cain means spear. He presumably we're going to name him Cain because he's going to spear. He's going to pierce through the serpent. And who does he end up killing? He ends up killing his own brother. Is he savior or serpent? It reminds me of that Kendrick Lamar album in 2017. Damn, is it wickedness or is it weakness? You decide. This is the choice that Cain has right in front of him. And what does he choose? He chooses the serpentine way. He kills his brother. Wonder what happens next. Then verse 9. Then Yahuwah said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" The same rhetorical question he asked Adam and Eve. Where are you in the garden? Now he's saying, Cain, where's your brother? How does Cain respond? And he said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" Let's stop there just for a second. That's obviously a horrendous thing to say to the Most High, and an extremely arrogant thing to say. But think about this. What was Abel's job? He was a keeper of the flock, right? Or he was a watcher of the flock. How did it say it exactly? Yeah, a keeper, which is the word shamar. Oh, that's actually a different word. Sorry. Down here is the word shamar. He's a keeper of the sheep, whereas Cain is a tiller of the ground. Cain raises up this this gardener, Cain, just like his dad was a gardener. This is the garden scene played all over again. And the Most High comes to him and says, "Where is your brother?" And he says to God, "Am I my brother's keeper?" In other words, I keep the garden. It's not my job to watch over him, right? It's not my job to, because remember, the man and the woman's job in the Garden of Eden was to work it and to keep it, to shamar it. And he comes now and he says, "Am I my brother's shamar? Or do I got to worry about him too? I'm already doing all this other stuff. Do I got to worry about him too?" This is Cain's response to the Most High. And he said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground." Again, let's stop for a second. According to the scriptures, innocent blood has a voice. Innocent blood has a voice, and that voice has a direct line to the Most High. So if this is what happens when one person kills another person, what happens when a nation is filled with blood? We won't go to it now, but Habakkuk 2 makes it very clear. Cursed is the city whose foundation is blood. All these things are being accounted for. Not the voice of not one. There's not the blood of one person that has not gone up to the Most High's ears on a deaf voice. I'm sorry, to a deaf ear. The Most High hears the crying out of blood from all of them. And in fact, Revelation chapter 5, it talks about how the saints even now are surrounding the throne of judgment and they're crying out day after day. How long? How long before you avenge us? So there are nations, and specifically one nation, Mystery Babylon, the whore of Babylon, according to Revelation 17. And she is filled with, she actually is drunk off the blood of the chosen, is what the scriptures say. What do you think her end will be? Revelation 17 makes that really clear. But here we have the very beginning of those themes in Genesis chapter 4. What have you done? The blood of your brother is crying out to me. So now you are cursed from the ground. This is the first time man is cursed in the whole Bible. Man is not cursed in Genesis chapter 3. Adam and Eve are not cursed. They have to deal with the consequences of a cursed ground and the cursed serpent. I keep repeating that because it's so ingrained in people that that study the Bible, that look at the Bible, that in Genesis 3, man and woman are cursed. That's not true. Genesis 3, they have to deal with the consequences of God's curse. And Genesis 4 is the first time man is cursed. You are cursed from the ground. It's as if because the blood of his brother is spilled out on the ground, he is allowing the curse that is on the ground to now spread to Cain like a virus. It's not just that Cain is having to deal with the curse. Now he himself is cursed. So now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive the blood of your brother, and from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall be a wanderer and a fugitive on the earth. And Cain said to Yahuwah, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Really interesting. He was talking real big back here. Am I my brother's keeper? I'm already keeping the guard, and you want me to do this other stuff too? He switched in just a couple sentences. He switched up. My punishment is greater than I can bear. Look, you have driven me out today from the face of the ground, and from your face I must hide. I will be a wanderer and a fugitive on earth, and it will happen that whoever finds me will kill me. Now, the next question that a lot of people have is, who is the who? Whoever finds me. It doesn't exactly say who in Hebrew. It says all. It's the word all. It could also be translated whatever finds me. So maybe he's afraid of the beasts that are out there, and now he's not under because they get removed from the Garden of Eden, and they're driven out presumably somewhere in Eden, but outside of the garden. Now he's being driven out even from presumably Eden itself. He's getting driven out into the wild wilderness, into not quite tovu wavohu, which is the watery chaos, but into a land version of that, into into, yeah, let's just call it the wilderness, the scary places, right? It could mean, there's a lot of things that could mean. Let's just stick to that for right now. There are other theories that Genesis 1 through the beginning of Genesis is actually a reset narrative, which there is some biblical credence to that. Or let me say it this way: there's nothing biblically that would combat an interpretation like that, and that opens up the door to a whole bunch of other things that is beyond the scope of this particular conversation. Verse 15, then Yahuwah said to him, therefore, uh, verse 14, look, you have driven me out today from the face of the ground, from the face, from your face I must hide. I will be a wanderer and a fugitive on the earth, and it will happen that whoever finds me will kill me. Then Yahuwah said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain will be avenged sevenfold. Then Yahuwah put a sign or a mark. This is the first time that a person is marked. Remember, Cain acts like the beast, and now he's getting marked. Interesting. Yahuwah put a sign on Cain so that whoever found him would not kill him. And Cain went out from the presence of Yahuwah, and he settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So now he's actually out, not just from the garden, he's out from Eden altogether. Cain, whose name means spear, or possession, double entendre, he's supposed to be Messiah in Eve's mind, Adam and Eve's mind. Instead, he acts like the serpent, and after acting like the serpent, he gets cursed just like the serpent. Now, the only ones cursed in the world right now are the serpent and Cain. They're the only cursed ones. But God puts a mark or a sign somewhere back here. He puts a sign on Cain. Here it is. He puts a sign on Cain, or a mark, so that whoever would find him would not kill him. Here's what's happening here. Is Cain cursed? Yeah, Cain is cursed. So he's not only dealing with the consequences of the cursed ground, but now from the ground itself, he himself is cursed. But it doesn't keep it. He's not no longer in the image of God. So because he's still in the image of God, God still marks him and sets him apart. And this mark on Cain is a mark that distinguishes him out in the wilderness as still one marked by Yahuwah. In other words, you kill Cain, you're going to have to deal with me, even though Cain is cursed. As this theme of beasts and marks move forward, we're going to see that by the time we get to Revelation and you get the mark of the beast and all those kinds of things, this theme has been very well understood. Before you get to Revelation, you got to go through a whole bunch of books to get there, right? And the people that would have been receiving the message in Revelation would have understood the motif of marks and beasts, and they would have understood that it started off first with the mark of the image bearers, that these image bearers are marked with the image of God and thus set apart. But then now this guy Cain, he gets marked with a he gets marked because he's acting like the beast and now has to deal with the consequences of being cursed, etc. Okay, hopefully that's not too confusing. Verse 17, and Cain knew his wife. So now Cain's line is going to proceed. And what's the consequence if you kill Cain? Whoever kills Cain will be avenged sevenfold. You don't want to play. You don't want to play about Cain. Yeah, he's cursed. Yeah, he's done absolute wrong, but he's still an image bearer. And because of that, God marks him and he says, whoever's out there, you mess with this one, you're going to die. And it's going to be a sevenfold punishment. All right, verse 17. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. Now, this is not the Enoch from this is not the Enoch that wrote the book of Enoch and all those kinds of things. And in fact, the word Enoch means dedication. So yeah, the feast of dedication is Hanukkah, the dedication, or Enoch, right? So she conceived and gave birth to Enoch, which means dedication. And he built a city, and he named the city after his son Enoch. So now Cain goes out from the presence of the Most High. He gets a wife, he has a son, and he names his son Dedication or Enoch, and he builds a city and names it after him. This is now the first time that we see a city built. We went from a garden, and now we're in a city. Now he gets ousted from the garden and has to build a city. So what are cities? Cities are artificial gardens. That's a whole other thing. But just cities are essentially artificial gardens, artificial man-made gardens. Verse 18, and to Enoch he bore Irad fathered Mahujael fathered Methusael fathered Lamech. Lamech took for himself two wives. So now this is 7 down from Cain, 7 generations down from Cain, we get a man named Lamech. In other words, Cain, who's supposed to be Messiah, he's supposed to be Savior, acts like the serpent. He gets marked, he gets sent out, he builds a city, and now we're tracing the line of this cursed one. Who's cursed? The serpent's cursed and Cain's cursed. Now we're following the line of this cursed one and his cursed line. Verse 17, knew his wife, etc. Verse 18, Lamech takes 2 wives. So now 7 down the line from him. 7 is being the perfect, a number of perfect spiritual completion is the number 7. He took 2 wives. The name of the first was Ada, and the name of the second was Zillah, and Ada gave birth to Jabal, and he was the father of those who live in tents and those who have livestock. And the name of his brother was Jubal, Jubal, and he was the father of all who play stringed instruments and wind instruments. Then Zillah also gave birth to Tubal Cain, who forged all kinds of tools, bronze and iron. Bronze and iron is really interesting. That'll come up in the book of Daniel later. And his sister Tubal Cain, Tubal Cain was Naamah. Then Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, listen to my voice. Wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a boy, a young man. I've killed a man for wounding me, and a boy, a young man, a boy, for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7-fold, then Lamech will be avenged 77 times. So what we're doing is we're following not the seed of the woman. Is Cain the seed of the woman? Well, he came from Adam and Eve for sure, but he's acting like the serpent seed. So now we've got a genealogy following what has become instead of partnering with the Most High against the serpent, he's partnered with the serpent against humanity. And his line furthers that same kind of self-destructive role until 7 generations later, you've got the accentuation of this bad line. And what is he doing? He's taking a bunch of wives. He's killing people for small offenses, and specifically, this is the word. Basically, this is the word boy. He's killing boys for injury. So this is what we've got is murder and lust, further accentuated. And he says, if Cain is avenged 7-fold, Lamech will be revenged 77 times. Meaning that I am much bigger and badder. There's a much greater consequence for crossing me than there was our cursed forefather. Verse 25, then Adam knew his wife, and she gave birth to a son, and she called his name Seth, or Set, which means replacement. For she said, God has appointed to me a child in the place of Abel, because Cain killed him. And as for Seth, he also fathered a son, and he called his name Enosh. And at this time, people began to call on the name of Yahuwah. So now here's what we have set up. Genesis 3, I will put hostility between you and between the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, and he will strike you on the head, and you will strike him on the heel. There's going to be 2 lines in the earth, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. we come down in Genesis 4. Adam and Eve thinks that this is going to be the one that destroys the serpent, but instead he begins to act like the serpent. And the spear, instead of crushing the head of the serpent, pierces through his brother and kills him, and thus receives the same kind of curse that the serpent has. Now, as this guy's line furthers down, they all act more and more serpentine until you get to this guy named Lamech. And Lamech is basically saying, I'm 77 times worse. There's 77 times more consequences for coming against me than there is Cain. He's that much worse. He's got more wives. He's willing to do more killing, et cetera and et cetera. But what we have set up is now this child named Seth, which means replacement. And through this child, we're going to have the next line, the next genealogy. For chapter 5, verse 1, this is the record of the generations of Adam. And now through this line, it's going to follow the line of Seth. So it's setting up the serpent seed versus the seed of Seth by way of Adam. All right. There's a lot of things that we can take away from the story of Cain and Abel. One of the takeaways is that we always have a choice. There's always the choice of death or life. Life comes from trusting in the promises of the Most High, clinging to the promises of the Most High, and following his instruction. Torah is our very life, is what the scriptures say. It is not a trifle for us. It's our very life. His instructions are important and they're not done away with, right? We must follow him and follow them. Otherwise, we end up looking like the serpent, acting like the serpent, and partnering with the serpent. And our line becomes serpentine, right? All right. This is Melanated Truth. There's a whole lot more that we could say. I'll save it for next time. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you need to catch up with a few of the other talks, I'll have them linked here. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this with somebody that might find it helpful. Also, we welcome comments in the comment section or emails sent to us or any of those kind of things to ask questions as we go on this journey together. So Romans 15:13, may the God of hope fill you with joy and peace in believing so that you may abound in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. God bless you and shalom.